The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of Gabriel Romano's penthouse office, crystal fragments catching the dying light of Manhattan's skyline. Blood from his knuckles dripped onto the financial reports scattered across his mahogany desk, each red drop a testament to the empire crumbling beneath his feet. Bankruptcy in 6 months, he whispered to the empty room, his voice hoarse from screaming at lawyers who couldn't perform miracles. Romano Couture, the fashion dynasty. His grandfather had built from nothing, would die with him. The irony wasn't lost on Gabriel. At 35, he had everything the world coveted, a face that graced magazine covers, a body sculpted by personal trainers, and a reputation that made competitors tremble. Yet he stood alone in his glass tower, watching his life's work dissolve, like sugar in rain. His phone buzzed against the desk. Another creditor, another threat, another nail in his coffin. He ignored it, focusing instead on the woman visible through his floor-to-ceiling windows in the building across the street. She sat at her kitchen table, helping a young girl with homework, her face soft with patience he'd never known. Camila Santos, his former receptionist. The woman who'd quit 3 months ago after he'd made the worst mistake of his life. Gabriel's chest tightened as memories flooded back. Camila's warm brown eyes wide with shock when he'd cornered her in the supply closet, his hands tangled in her dark hair as he kissed her with desperate hunger. She'd pushed him away, her engagement ring catching the fluorescent light like an accusation. "I'm getting married in 2 weeks," she'd whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "How could you do this to me?" He destroyed everything that day, lost the only person who'd ever looked at him like he was more than his money, more than his name. And now, as his empire collapsed, he realized she'd been the only thing that mattered. A knock interrupted his spiral into self-destruction. Lena Vasquez, his marketing director, entered without waiting for permission. Her usually perfect composure had cracked, revealing the exhaustion beneath. "Gabriel, we need to talk." She moved to his bar, pouring 2 glasses of scotch with shaking hands. "I have news about the Delacroix merger." Gabriel straightened, hope flickering in his chest. The merger with French luxury conglomerate Delacroix Industries was his last chance at salvation. "And they're backing out," Lena's words hit him, like physical blows. They said Romano Couture's reputation has become too volatile for their brand image. The room spun around Gabriel, gripped the edge of his desk, knuckles white with strain. "What reputation? What are they talking about?" Alina's expression grew pained. "There are rumors, Gabriel, about you and female employees, about inappropriate conduct. Someone's been feeding stories to the press." Gabriel's blood turned to ice. "Who, we don't know. But whoever it is has access to internal information. They know about private meetings, personal conversations." She paused, studying his face. "They know about Camila." The name hung between them like a loaded weapon. Gabriel's mind raced, connecting dots he'd been too proud to see. Only a handful of people knew about his feelings for Camila, about the kiss that had destroyed everything. "It's Diego," he breathed, the realization hitting him like lightning. Camila's fiancé, now husband. The car salesman who'd always resented her job at Romano Couture, who'd pushed her to quit, who'd probably celebrated when she'd come home crying that day. "You think he's behind the leaks?" Lena asked. Gabriel's hands clenched into fists. "No, he is. He's been planning this, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy me." His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "And he's using my feelings for his wife to do it." Alina set down her glass, her face grave. "Gabriel, what are you going to do?" Gabriel walked to his window, staring across the street at Camila's apartment. The lights were on, and he could see her silhouette moving through the rooms of the modest space she'd once called home. She looked different now, older somehow, the carefree joy that had first captivated him, replaced by something harder. "Going to get her back," he said quietly. "And I'm going to destroy the man who tried to destroy me." Alina's sharp intake of breath echoed through the office. "Gabriel, she's married now. You can't just... Can't what?"
Yes.
He turned to face her, his green eyes blazing with newfound purpose. "I can't fight for the woman I love. Can't take back what was stolen from me." His smile was cold, predatory. "Watch me." As night fell over Manhattan, Gabriel Romano began planning his most dangerous game yet. He would win back Camila Santos, even if it meant burning down everything else in the process. After all, he had nothing left to lose. The war for his soul was about to begin. The coffee shop on 42nd Street buzzed with morning energy, steam rising from countless cups while commuters rushed past rain-streaked windows. Gabriel sat in the corner booth, his designer coat dark with moisture, watching the entrance like a predator studying prey. He'd been following Camila's routine for 2 weeks, learning her patterns with the methodical precision that had once built his empire. Coffee at 8:15 every Tuesday. It's always the same booth by the window, always alone. The bell above the door chimed and she entered like a ghost from his past. Camila moved differently now, her shoulders slightly hunched, her eyes constantly scanning the room as if expecting danger. Marriage hadn't brought her the happiness she'd sought. Gabriel could see it in the tight line of her mouth, the way she clutched her purse like armor. She ordered her usual vanilla latte with extra foam and Gabriel waited until she'd settled into her booth before approaching. His heart hammered against his ribs as he slid into the seat across from her. Uninvited but not unwelcome, judging by the way her breath caught. "Hello, Camila."
Hey.
Her brown eyes widened, coffee cup halfway to her lips. She set it down with trembling fingers, the porcelain clicking against the saucer. "Gabriel, what are you doing here?"
Having coffee, duster to his untouched espresso.
"Same as you. This is my neighborhood." Her voice carried an edge he'd never heard before. "Oh, you don't belong here." Gabriel leaned back, studying her face with hungry eyes. She was thinner than he remembered, sharp angles where soft curves used to be. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her wedding ring caught the fluorescent light like a prison shackle. "Look tired," he said softly. "I'm fine." The lie came too quickly, too rehearsed. "Are you?" Gabriel's voice dropped to the intimate tone he'd once used in empty hallways and stolen moments. "Because you look like someone who hasn't slept in months." Camila's facade cracked slightly. She glanced toward the window, then back at him. "Why are you here, Gabriel?" "Really? I know about Diego?" The words hung between them like a death sentence. Camila's face went pale, her hand instinctively moving to her throat. "What about Diego? I know he's been feeding stories to the press. About me. About us." Gabriel's voice remained calm, but his eyes burned with controlled fury. "I know he's trying to destroy Romano Couture? That's ridiculous." But her protest lacked conviction. Her eyes darted away, confirming what Gabriel already suspected. "Is it?" He leaned forward, close enough to smell her perfume, something cheap and floral. Nothing like the expensive scents she'd once worn to work. "Tell me, Camila, when did your husband start asking detailed questions about your time at my company? When did he begin demanding you remember every conversation, every meeting?" Her silence was answer enough. Gabriel's hand moved across the table, fingers barely brushing hers before she jerked away. The brief contact sent electricity through his veins, a reminder of what they'd almost had. "He's using you," Gabriel whispered. "Your memories, your access, your guilt about what happened between us. He's weaponizing your conscience to destroy me." "Stop!" Camila's voice broke slightly. "Just stop. I can help you." Gabriel's tone shifted, becoming gentle, persuasive. "I know you're not happy. I can see it in your eyes, the way you carry yourself. He's changed you, hasn't he? Made you smaller, more fearful." Tears gathered in Camila's eyes, and Gabriel felt a twisted satisfaction. At hitting his mark, he'd always been able to read her, understand the thought she tried to hide. "I'm married," she whispered, as if the words were a shield. "To a man who's using you to commit corporate espionage?" Gabriel's voice hardened. "Do you even understand what he's doing? The laws he's breaking? When this comes out you'll be implicated too." Fear flashed across Camila's features. "I haven't done anything wrong, haven't you?" Gabriel tilted his head, studying her like a chess master, considering his next move. "How many private conversations did you overhear in my office? How many confidential documents did you handle? How much of that information found its way to Diego's ears during pillow talk?" Whenever she stopped, realization dawning on her face. Gabriel could see her replaying conversations, remembering casual questions that hadn't seemed important at the time. He's been grooming you for this since the day you started working for me, Gabriel continued relentlessly. The quick courtship, the pressure to quit, the constant questions disguised as interest in your day, you've been his weapon from the beginning. Camila buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Gabriel felt a moment of genuine regret at her pain, but pushed it aside. This was war, and casualties were inevitable. Me help you, he repeated, his voice soft with false compassion. Leave him. Come back to work for me. I'll protect you from the legal fallout, make sure you're safe. She looked up at him through her tears, and for a moment Gabriel saw a young woman who'd once smiled at him across a reception desk, innocent, trusting, believing in fairy tales. Why would you help me? She asked. After everything that happened? Gabriel's smile was carefully crafted, equal parts charm and vulnerability. Because despite everything, I still care about you. I always have. It wasn't entirely a lie. Gabriel did care about Camila in his own twisted way. But his primary motivation was revenge against the man who dared to challenge him, reclaiming what he considered his property. Camila wiped her eyes with a paper napkin, smearing her mascara. I need time to think. Of course. Gabriel reached into his jacket, pulling out a business card with his personal number written on the back. Call me when you're ready to talk. Day or night. She took the card with reluctant fingers, staring at the numbers as if they might bite her. Gabriel stood, dropping a 20 on the table for their coffees. Camila. She looked up at him, eyes red-rimmed and vulnerable. You deserve better than this. You always have. He walked away without looking back, knowing she was watching him go. The first move in his game was complete. Now, he had to wait for Diego to make his next mistake, providing the opening Gabriel needed to destroy him completely. Outside, rain continued to fall on the city, washing the streets clean while secrets festered in the shadows. Gabriel pulled out his phone, dialing a familiar number. Marcus, he spoke to his private investigator. I need everything you can. Find on Diego Martinez. Financial records, employment history, criminal background. I want to know every skeleton in his closet. A hunt had begun in earnest. The photograph slid across the mahogany table like a snake striking its prey. Gabriel watched Diego Martinez's face drain of color as he stared at the image of himself entering. A seedy motel with a woman who definitely wasn't his wife. Interesting. Reading material, Gabriel said, settling back in his leather chair. The conference room on the 40th floor of Romano Couture felt like a gladiatorial arena. Floor 2 ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city Diego would never be able to afford. Diego's hands shook as he picked up the photograph, his cheap suit wrinkled from nervous sweating. This doesn't prove anything, doesn't it? Gabriel's smile was razor sharp. Marcela Herrera, 23 years old, works at the Gentlemen's Club on Route 9. According to my investigator, you've been seeing her every Thursday for the past 6 months. He slid another photo across the table. This one shows you giving her money. Quite a lot of money, actually. More than a car salesman should be able to afford. Diego's face flushed red with rage and embarrassment. You sick bastard. You had me followed. I had you investigated, Gabriel corrected. There's a difference. One is personal curiosity. The other is protecting my business interests. He leaned forward, green eyes cold as Arctic ice. Guess which category you fall into. I don't know what game you're playing, but the game is over, Diego. Gabriel's voice cut through the smaller man's protests like a blade. I know about the industrial espionage. I know you've been feeding information to my competitors using details Camila innocently shared with you. Know about the fabricated stories you've been selling to gossip rags. Diego's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Gabriel savored the moment, the sweet taste of victory after months of humiliation. The question now, Gabriel continued, is what we're going to do about it. You can't prove any of that. But Diego's voice lacked conviction. Gabriel opened his laptop, turning the screen toward his guest. Security footage played silently, showing Diego meeting with various men in coffee shops, restaurants, parking Lots Marcus is very thorough. He managed to get recordings of 3 separate conversations where you discuss confidential Romano Couture information. Industrial espionage carries a federal sentence of up to 15 years. The color completely drained from Diego's face. I want a lawyer. You're not under arrest yet. Gabriel closed the laptop with deliberate slowness. But I can have you. Arrested within the hour, along with your girlfriend, actually. Turns out, Marcella has been sharing our conversations with some very interesting people. Money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy charges could stick to both of you. Diego slumped in his chair, the fight draining out of him like air from a punctured balloon. What do you want? I want my wife back. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Diego's head snapped up, eyes wide with shock and rage. Not your wife? You psychotic son of a bitch. She's mine. Gabriel's smile widened, showing teeth like a shark scenting blood. Because from where I'm sitting, you're about to lose everything. Your job, your freedom, your reputation. What exactly are you offering her besides a future of poverty and shame? Camila would never. Camila already called me. The lie rolled off Gabriel's tongue smoothly. She's been thinking about our conversation, about the choices she's made and the man she married. He paused, watching Diego's face crumple. She knows the truth about you now. It wasn't entirely false. Camila had called, her voice small and frightened, asking to meet. Gabriel had sensed her resolve cracking, her marriage fracturing under the weight of discovery and doubt. You're lying. But Diego sounded like a man trying to convince himself. Gabriel pulled out his phone, scrolling through recent calls until he found Camila's number. Would you like me to call her? Ask her to choose between us right now? His finger hovered over the screen. I have a feeling I know what her answer will be. Stop. Diego's voice broke. Just stop. Then let's discuss terms, Gabriel said. His phone aside, suddenly all business. You're going to disappear from Camila's life. Quietly, without drama or accusations. You'll take a job in another city. I have connections in Detroit who might be willing to overlook your criminal background in exchange for a favor from me. And if I refuse, then I destroy you completely. Gabriel's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. I will rain down legal hell on you until you're broken and homeless. I will make sure every person you've ever known understands exactly what kind of man you are. And then, when you have nothing left, I will still take Camila from you. Diego stared at him with naked hatred. She'll never forgive you for this. When she finds out what you've done, what I've done. Gabriel laughed, the sound echoing coldly off the conference room walls. I've exposed the truth about her husband. I've shown her that the man she married is a liar, a cheat, and a criminal. If anything, she should thank me for saving her from a lifetime of deception. The door to the conference room opened and Camila stepped inside. She looked fragile in her simple dress, clutching a folder against her chest like armor. Her eyes moved between the two men, taking in Diego's guilty expression and Gabriel's predatory satisfaction. Hello, Diego, she said quietly. Gabriel. Diego jumped to his feet, desperation clear in his voice. Camila, whatever he's told you, is it true? Her voice was steady, despite the tears gathering in her eyes. About Marcella, about the money you've been taking. Diego's mouth worked soundlessly for several seconds before the words came. I can explain, is it true? She repeated louder. This time Gabriel watched the scene unfold with dark satisfaction. He'd orchestrated this moment perfectly, timing Camila's arrival to catch Diego in his web of lies. Yes, Diego whispered, collapsing back into his chair. But you don't understand the pressure I was under. It's the bills, the debt, the way he made. You feel worthless. Stop. Camila's voice cut through his excuses. Just stop talking. She walked to the table, setting down the folder she'd been carrying. Inside, Gabriel could see legal documents, financial records, evidence of Diego's betrayal compiled over weeks of painful discovery. I've been investigating too, she said quietly. After Gabriel told me about the press leaks, I started paying attention. To the questions you asked, the places you went, the money you spent that we didn't have. She looked at her husband with eyes full of hurt and disgust. I know about the gambling debts. I know about the loan sharks. I know you sold information about Gabriel's company to pay for your mistakes. Diego's face crumpled completely. Camila, please. I love you. You did it all for us. You did it for yourself. She pulled off her wedding ring, setting it on the table between the two men. I want a divorce. Gabriel's heart raced with triumph, but he kept his expression carefully neutral. The pieces were falling into place exactly as he'd planned. Camila. Diego pleaded, reaching for her hand. Don't do this. We can work through this. I'll get help. I'll change. It's too late. She stepped back out of his reach. I'm done being your victim. Diego's eyes filled with rage as he turned to Gabriel. This is what you wanted, isn't it? You destroyed my marriage just to get back at me? Gabriel stood slowly, straightening his tie with deliberate care. I didn't destroy your marriage, Diego. You did. I simply made sure Camila knew the truth about the man she married. And what happens now? Diego's voice was bitter with defeat. You get everything you want. Gabriel looked at Camila, drinking in her pain and vulnerability like wine. Now, Camila gets to choose her own future, without lies, without manipulation, without fear. It was the ultimate irony, Gabriel realized. He was offering Camila freedom from Diego's control, even as he planned to make her dependent on his own. The difference was that Gabriel would give her luxury, security, and passion in exchange for her submission. Diego had offered her nothing but misery, the job in Detroit. Starts Monday, Gabriel told Diego. I suggest you take it. Diego looked one last time at his wife, memorizing her face with desperate eyes. I'm sorry, Camila, for everything. She didn't respond, didn't even look at him as he gathered the photographs and walked toward the door. Gabriel waited until they heard the elevator close before speaking. Are you all right? Camila laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. All right. I just discovered my husband is a criminal who's been using me to commit corporate espionage. I'm getting divorced, and I have nowhere to go. How could I possibly be all right? Gabriel moved around the table, stopping just close enough to offer comfort without seeming threatening. You have somewhere to go? You always have. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. Is this what you wanted? To see me broken and desperate. Wanted to see you free, Gabriel said, and for once, he meant it. We're to make choices that aren't based on lies or fear. And what choice would you have me make? Her voice carried a challenge that made Gabriel's pulse quicken. He reached out slowly, gently wiping a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Come back to me, Camila. Let me take care of you the way you deserve. She closed her eyes at his touch, and Gabriel knew he had one. The penthouse apartment overlooked Central Park, like a throne room surveying conquered territory. Camila stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, wrapped in Gabriel's silk robe, watching the sun set over Manhattan. 3 months had passed since her divorce finalized. 3 months of living in Gabriel's world of designer clothes and expensive restaurants and conversations that danced around the elephant in every room. She was his prisoner in paradise. They both knew it. The car is waiting downstairs. Gabriel's voice came from behind her, smooth and controlled as always. She could see his reflection in the window glass, adjusting platinum cufflinks on his black tuxedo. The charity gala starts in an hour. Camila turned to face him, noting how his eyes immediately traveled her body with hungry appreciation. The emerald dress he'd chosen for her tonight cost more than she'd earned in 6 months as his receptionist. Everything she wore, everything she owned, came from Gabriel's generosity. She'd become his beautiful kept woman, and the realization made her sick with self-disgust. I've been thinking, she said quietly. Gabriel's hands stilled on his cufflinks. About what? About leaving. The words hung between them like a blade. Gabriel's expression didn't change, but Camila caught the flash of something dangerous in his green eyes. Leaving for where? His tone remained casual, but ice had crept into his voice. I don't know. Somewhere I can start over, build a life that's actually mine. She gestured around the opulent apartment. This isn't real, Gabriel. It's a fantasy you've created, and I'm suffocating in it. Gabriel walked toward her with predatory grace, stopping close enough that she could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. You think this is a fantasy? I've given you everything you could possibly want? Everything you think I should want, Camila corrected. But you never asked what I actually wanted. And what do you want? Gabriel's hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone with possessive gentleness. Tell me, and I'll give it to you. Camila closed her eyes, leaning into his touch despite herself. This was the cruelest part of her captivity, how much she craved Gabriel's attention. How her body responded to his nearness, even as her mind rebelled against his control. I want to matter, she whispered. I want to be more than just a beautiful accessory to your life. You are more, am I? She stepped back, breaking contact. What do I do here, Gabriel? I don't work. I don't contribute anything meaningful. Exist for your pleasure and nothing else. Gabriel's jaw tightened. Recovering from trauma? The divorce? Diego's betrayal? Stop. Camila's voice turned sharp. Stop using Diego as justification for keeping me locked in this golden cage. Yes, he hurt me. Yes, he used me. But what you're doing isn't that different. The words hit Gabriel like physical blows. The face went cold, the mask of civilized control, slipping to reveal something raw and possessive underneath. How dare you compare me to him? Gabriel's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. I worship you. I've given you a life of luxury, protection, everything except choice. Camila's eyes blazed with newfound defiance. I can't leave this apartment without your permission. I can't see friends you haven't approved. Can't even order food without your credit card, because I have no money of my own. I provide for you, you control me. The accusation hung between them like a death sentence. Just like Diego did, only with better window dressing. Gabriel's control finally snapped, grabbed Camila's wrists, pulling her against him with bruising force. You want to know the difference between me and Diego? I would die for you. I would burn this entire city to ash if someone tried to hurt you. Can you say the same about your loving husband? Let go of me, Camila's voice was steady, despite the fear flickering in her eyes. Not until you understand. Gabriel's grip tightened. Do you think this is easy for me? Watching you look at me like I'm the villain in your story? I saved you from a man who was destroying your life. You destroyed his life to claim me as a prize. The words exploded from Camila with years of suppressed rage. You didn't save me, Gabriel. You just changed owners. Gabriel released her as if she'd burned him, staggering backward with shock written across his features. For a moment, his mask dropped completely, revealing the lost, desperate man hiding beneath all that wealth and power. Is that really what you think? His voice was small, vulnerable in a way Camila had never heard before. I think you're a man who takes what he wants and calls it love. Camila rubbed her wrists where his fingers had left marks. I think you convinced yourself that possessing me was the same as caring about me. Gabriel sank onto the leather sofa, burying his face in his hands. I do love you. More than you'll ever understand. Then let me go. The simple request hung in the air like a challenge. Gabriel looked up at her through his fingers, and Camila saw something she'd never expected: genuine fear. I can't, he admitted. I've lost everything else. My company is hanging by a thread. My reputation is in ruins. My family name means nothing anymore. You're all I have left. For the first time since moving into the penthouse, Camila felt a flicker of sympathy for Gabriel. Beneath all his arrogance and control, he was as broken as she was, just in different ways. Your company is failing because you've been too focused on revenge to run it properly, she said gently. Your reputation is damaged because you made an enemy of the wrong person. And your family name will recover if you stop using it as an excuse to hurt people. Gabriel laughed bitterly. You think I can just snap my fingers and fix everything? Diego's sabotage cost me millions in contracts, destroyed relationships I spent years building, then build new ones. Camila sat beside him on the sofa, careful, to maintain distance while offering comfort. Stop looking backward and start moving forward. With you? Hope crept into Gabriel's voice like sunrise after endless night. Not with me, Camila said softly. I can't be your salvation, Gabriel. You have to save yourself. Gabriel's face crumpled with pain and rage. So that's it? After everything we've been through, everything I've done for you, you're just going to walk away? What we've been through? Camila's voice hardened again. You mean the coercion, the manipulation, the systematic destruction of my marriage so you could claim me? Yes, Gabriel. I'm walking away from that. Gabriel stood abruptly, pacing to the window like a caged predator. Where will you go? You have no money, no job, no references. I won't sabotage. You think you can survive in this city without me? Da-da. Threat was clear, and Camila felt her fragile confidence crack. Gabriel was right. He'd made her completely dependent on him, cutting off every avenue of escape with surgical precision. You'd really do that? She asked quietly. Destroy my chances. And a new life just to keep me trapped here? Gabriel turned to face her, and Camila saw the war raging behind his eyes. Love battling possessiveness, genuine care fighting desperate control. I don't want to, he said finally, but I will if I have to. The honesty of his answer chilled Camila to the bone. This was Gabriel Romano stripped of all pretense, revealing the obsessive core that drove every decision he made. Then you've already lost me, she whispered. Because the woman you claim to love would never stay with a man who threatens her freedom. Gabriel's phone buzzed against the coffee table, interrupting the tense silence. He glanced at the screen, his face going pale as he read the message. What is it? Camila asked. My lawyer. Gabriel's voice was hollow with shock. The SEC is filing charges. Securities fraud, market manipulation, insider trading. He looked up at her with haunted eyes. Diego's evidence wasn't just about industrial espionage. He documented everything, every gray area deal, every bending of rules, every shortcut I took to keep Romano Couture afloat. Camila felt her world tilt sideways. What does that mean? This means I'm going to prison? Gabriel laughed. But the sound was broken, desperate. 20 years minimum? Maybe more? The room fell silent, except for the distant sounds of Manhattan. Traffic. Camila stared at Gabriel, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. It's not the powerful CEO or the dangerous predator, but a man who'd gambled everything on revenge and lost. I'm sorry, she said, and meant it. Gabriel looked at her. With eyes full of pain and desperate love. Will you visit me? The question broke Camila's heart. Even facing imprisonment, Gabriel was still trying to maintain his hold on her. But for the first time, his grip felt loose enough to break. No, she said gently. I won't. Accepting her answer with the resignation of a man who'd finally run out of moves, the car is still waiting downstairs. The driver has instructions to take you wherever you want to go. Camila stood, moving toward the bedroom to change out of the emerald dress. At the doorway, she paused, looking back at the man who'd claimed to love her enough to destroy the world. Goodbye, Gabriel. He didn't respond, staring out at the city that had once belonged to him. Camila left him there, surrounded by the ruins of his empire, finally understanding that some cages could only be unlocked from the inside. 2 years later, Camila Santos stood in the doorway of her small art studio in Brooklyn, paintbrush trembling in her hand as she stared at the canvas before her. The gallery opening was tomorrow night, her first solo exhibition, and the centerpiece. Painting remained unfinished. It was a portrait of a man in a prison cell, his hands pressed against the bars, eyes full of rage and longing, and something that might have been love. She'd been working on it for months, trying to capture the complexity of Gabriel Romano's face on that last night in his penthouse. The memory still haunted her dreams. You're going to stare a hole through that canvas? Camila turned to find Marcus. Chen, the gallery owner, standing behind her with 2 cups of coffee. He was a kind man in his 50s who'd discovered her work at a local coffee shop and offered her this chance when no one else would. I can't get his eyes right, she admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. They need to show everything he was feeling, but every time I try to add more depth, I lose something else. Marcus studied the painting with the practiced eye of someone who'd been in the art world for decades. Maybe the problem isn't what you're adding. Maybe it's what you're afraid to show. What do you mean? You've painted him as a monster in a cage. But monsters don't look at freedom with that kind of longing. Marcus sipped his coffee thoughtfully. What if he wasn't the villain of your story? What if he was just another victim of his own choices? Camila's hand tightened around her brush. She'd spent 2 years rebuilding her life, working 3 jobs while attending night classes at the community college, slowly transforming from Gabriel's kept woman into her own person. The process had been painful, liberating, and ultimately healing. But Gabriel remained an unfinished chapter in her story. I got a letter last week, she said quietly, from his lawyer. Gabriel's being released early for good behavior. Marcus raised an eyebrow. How do you feel about that? Terrified, angry, confused. Camila set down her coffee, moving closer to the painting. For 2 years, I've been free to make my own choices, build my own life. The thought of him being out there again makes me feel like that frightened woman who couldn't leave his apartment. But you're not that woman anymore, aren't I? Camila gestured around the studio at the canvases covering every surface. Look what I paint, Marcus. Every single piece is about captivity, control, the price of obsession. Him, but he's still controlling my art, my thoughts, my fear of the future. Marcus walked to another painting, this one showing a bird with clipped wings sitting in an open cage. Or maybe you're processing trauma through art, which is exactly what artists are supposed to do. Your work is powerful because it comes from a place of truth. A knock at the studio door interrupted their conversation. Camila's blood turned to ice when she saw who stood on the other side of the glass. Gabriel Romano. Thinner than she remembered, wearing a cheap suit that looked foreign on his once powerful frame. Do you want me to call the police? Marcus asked quietly. Camila stared at Gabriel for a long moment, taking in the changes 2 years in prison had wrought. His face was leaner, marked by new lines around his eyes. His perfect hair was shorter, less styled, but his eyes were the same intense, haunting, filled with that dangerous combination of love and possession that had once defined her world. No, she said finally. Let him in. Marcus looked uncertain. You sure? I'm sure. Camila straightened her shoulders, calling on every ounce of strength she'd built during her months of freedom. It's time to finish this. Gabriel entered the studio like a man walking into a church, his eyes immediately drawn to the paintings covering the walls. Camila watched him take in her work, the cages, the chains, the portraits of women breaking free from invisible bonds. When his gaze finally landed on the unfinished portrait of himself, he stopped breathing. You painted me, he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. I painted my nightmare, Camila corrected. There's a difference. Gabriel flinched as if she'd slapped him. I deserved that. You deserved a lot more than that. Camila kept her distance, using the easel as a barrier between them. What are you doing here, Gabriel? I wanted to see you, to apologize. He looked around the studio again, genuine admiration in his expression. This is incredible, Camila. You're incredible. You're built. Something real, something beautiful. No thanks to you. No. Gabriel agreed quietly. Despite me. Despite everything I did to try to keep you trapped in my world. He moved closer to the unfinished painting, studying his own face with clinical detachment. Prison gave me a lot of time to think about the man I used to be, the man who thought love was the same as ownership. And what conclusion did you reach? Camila asked, not bothering to hide her skepticism. Gabriel's smile was sad, self-aware in a way she'd never seen before. That I never loved you at all. I was obsessed with you, addicted to the idea of possessing something pure and beautiful. But love requires seeing the other person as an individual, respecting their autonomy, wanting their happiness even when it doesn't include you. He looked directly at her. I was incapable of that kind of love. The admission hung between them. Like a bridge neither quite knew how to cross, Camila felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of anger and fear she'd carried for 2 years. Why tell me this now? She asked. Because you deserve to hear it? Because I needed to say it. Gabriel's hands remained at his sides, making no move to approach her. And because I wanted you to know that I'm leaving New York tonight. I have a job lined up in Seattle, working for a small textile company. Nothing glamorous, but it's honest work. Camila blinked in surprise. You're leaving? My presence here would only hurt you more. You've built something beautiful, Camila. You don't need the shadow of my past mistakes hanging over your future. For the first time since Gabriel had entered her studio, Camila felt her guard drop. Slightly. This wasn't the possessive, controlling man who'd kept her prisoner in his penthouse. This was someone changed by consequence, humbled by loss, finally capable of putting her needs above his own desires. The painting, Gabriel said, nodding toward the unfinished portrait. May I ask why you chose to paint me behind bars?
Camila?
Considered lying, offering some artistic explanation that would maintain distance between them. Instead, she chose honesty. Because that's how I saw you in the end. Not as my captor, but as someone who'd imprisoned himself with his own choices. The bars weren't keeping you in, they were keeping love out. Gabriel's eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. You see too much? I see what's there. Camila picked up her brush, adding a few careful strokes to the painted eyes, finally capturing the depth she'd been searching for. The question is whether you can see it too? I'm trying to. Gabriel pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket, setting it on the paint-splattered table beside her easel. This is for you, not money, he added quickly when he saw her expression. Something else. Camila opened the envelope with cautious fingers, pulling out legal documents that made her gasp. Gabriel, this is the deed to this building, and the gallery space downstairs. Marcus told me you've been worried about rent increases pushing you out of the neighborhood? Gabriel's voice was matter-of-fact, businesslike. Consider it an apology gift, or reparations. Whatever makes you comfortable accepting it. I can't take this. Camila stared at the papers in shock. This building must be worth less than what I owe you for 2 years of your life. Gabriel was already moving toward the door. There are no strings attached, Camila. There's no hidden clauses. No way for me to use this as leverage over you. It's yours, free and clear. Gabriel, wait. He stopped at the door, hand on the handle. Are you really doing this? He turned back to face her one last time, and Camila saw something in his expression she'd never seen before. Peace. Because loving someone means wanting them to fly even when they fly away from you. It took me 2 years in a cell to learn that lesson, but I finally understand. He smiled, and for the first time since she'd known him, it reached his eyes. Goodbye, Camila. Be happy. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Camila alone with her paintings and the deed to her future. She looked at the portrait on her easel, finally understanding what it had been missing. With careful strokes, she painted a key. In Gabriel's hand, not trying to unlock the bars, but dropping it to the floor, finally choosing freedom over control. The next evening, her gallery opening was a resounding success. Critics praised her raw emotional honesty. Collectors fought over pieces. And Camila found herself surrounded by people who saw her art as more than pretty decoration, they saw it as truth. As the crowd began to thin, Marcus approached her with a champagne flute and a satisfied smile. So, what's next for the rising star of the Brooklyn art scene? Camila looked around the gallery at her paintings, at the life she'd built from nothing, at the future that stretched before her bright with possibility. For the first time in years, she felt truly free, not from Gabriel's control, but from her own fear of it. I think, she said, raising her glass in a toast to herself, I'm going to paint something beautiful. Outside, snow began to fall on the city, covering the streets in pristine white. Somewhere in the distance, a plane lifted off from JFK, carrying its passengers toward new horizons and second chances. In her studio above the gallery, Camila's unfinished portrait caught the light from the street lamps below. It's the man behind. The bars no longer looked like a monster or a victim. They looked like someone who had finally learned the difference between possession and love. Someone who had chosen redemption over revenge. The painting was complete at last. The end.